Hey, what's up guys? In my last video, my New Year's resolution, I explained how my New Year's resolution for 2015 was to try and be more honest and more vulnerable about expressing who I am, because I feel that that is one of the most rewarding journeys any person can embark upon, because if you start to figure out who you are and if you can express that to the world, I believe that's the one thing that will improve your life on all levels, and the rest of your life will reflect at what stage you are on that journey. But to go back to the beginning and just to give you a little bit of background to my story and to why I've come to this time and place in my life where I believe it's the one thing that I feel most passionate about, is because I think this is something that affects all of us, or most of us, again to different varying degrees, because a lot of it is dependent on your past and how you've been brought up and the conditioning that you've absorbed to make you the person that you are today. So looking back at your upbringing and your experiences you've had, especially through childhood, is a great way to first understand why you are the person you are today and why you're reliving those experiences on a day-to-day basis, even if you are unconscious and unaware of that. So, you know, my life so far has been fairly ordinary, I guess you could say. Nothing too extraordinary, or it's just pretty normal, I guess, average Joe kind of life really. And like most people, I guess a lot of this stuff probably started arising maybe in school, because I believe school, I mean, think about it, from what, the age of 4 or 5 you go into this institution called school, and you're in there until what, 16, 18, so it has a massive effect on who you are. And I believe what it does is, although it's there to try and educate you, by the way it does this, it also takes things away from you, or makes you forget things that put you in touch with who you really are. And I think it also breeds a dependence on your mind, an over-dependence on your mind. If just to try and explain this, when you look at kids when they're young, kind of preschool age, or maybe just going to play school or whatever, kids are always full of energy and they're always engaging, unless they've had some traumatic experiences passed on by adults. They're always engaging in the world around them. Of course they all have their different kind of personalities, but generally they are engaging all the time. They're always doing, and they're always expressing themselves. You very rarely ever look at kids of that age and see them lost in space, kind of with a glazed look in their eyes. You know, like how a lot of us as adults almost spend our waking days, well, not really waking, but we spend most of our days sometimes in a state like this. You walk down a street and you're not even really aware that you're walking down a street. Maybe you're just staring at the ground, maybe you're thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow, what you want to say to somebody that you know you're about to meet or whatever. You're always up here and you're rarely expressing right now, in the present moment. And I believe when you go through school, because it has a massive emphasis on learning information that you hold in your head and then you have to recite, and that apparently is a basis on how intelligent a person is, and that is how you're measured to then go into society afterwards, you lose touch with that more kind of natural and creative and expressive side of your personality. And then of course when you get into high school, all of these pressures about fitting in to the so-called group start to really take their precedence over you and everyone else. And I think this method and this way of personal development that you experience as a kid and then as a teenager carries on into your adult life. And a lot of adults spend a lot of time trying to fix the things that went wrong, or to try and find out who they really are before all of this happened. I'm not just writing off education at all. There's school, I've had some great times at school, and but at the same time I realised, especially looking back through my high school years, that I found it incredibly hard to express myself in a way that I wanted to. And I think most of us, I mean, this is just normal, isn't it? But what we think is normal. We just assume this is part of growing up. You know, the awkward teenager, having mood swings and all this kind of stuff. But I vividly recall spending large parts of lessons just staring out of windows and almost disassociating myself from that present moment, and just becoming like living in a bit of a daydream world. And when you start to do that, it's very hard to get out of your head. Then if you get stuck in your head, like anyone who ever struggles with being stuck in their head realizes, it kind of becomes a bit of a prison and a bit of a trap. So how do you get out of that? And what are the kind of ways that you figure out to get back in touch with just being you? Because the age-old information, the age-old advice of just be yourself, when you take that on, it is not as simple as it sounds. And this is what, in the last few years, I've been doing. I'm trying to just be myself, but the more that I'm delving into what myself is, the more interesting things I'm finding out about myself. And I'm starting to discover parts of myself that are not really, I don't believe, true to who I actually am. I've been trying to figure out where these parts of myself come from. Because how can you be yourself if you're not aware of what your true self is? Because it's easy just to tell someone, oh, just be yourself and you'll be fine. But like we all know, if it was that easy, then there wouldn't be so much problems with people expressing themselves in a more positive way. And the whole self-help industry wouldn't have to exist, or therapy wouldn't have to exist, or all of these kind of things. A lot of us seem to have a lot of baggage and seem to be messed up in certain ways. Again, some more than others. Some people have had a great upbringing, a great childhood, have naturally been born into a loving and confident family that propels them and gives them that inner belief to just believe in themselves, and they probably maybe don't suffer to the same degree, but I think most of us on some degree do. And when you start to become aware of this and you see it in your everyday reality, then it's very hard to go back to the old way of communicating, existing and seeing the world, because you realize it is a kind of semi-illusion that everyone is perpetuating through the ways that we express ourselves every day to each other, even though we all know deep down that we're not really doing it in an honest way. And when we're away from society, or with our friends or our family, we then suddenly become ourselves. But even then, like, to what extent are you still holding stuff within? So yeah, it's a massive subject, but it's a fascinating one, and it's one that just goes, if you really start to follow it, will take you to places, fascinating places, and bring up truths for you that are life-changing, to be honest with you. So let's try and look into this a little bit deeper.